Someone pressed these marks into wet clay with intention, not to make art, not to preserve a prayer. The scribe who shaped this tablet in a city that no longer exists, in a language no one has spoken for 3,000 years, was leaving something behind for a specific reason. We know this because AI has now reconstructed the damaged lines and cross-referenced them against the wider Sumerian record. And what they reveal is not a hymn, not a flood myth, not a royal decree. It is a warning, structured, deliberate, addressed not to the scribe's world, addressed to ours. Cuneiform is not mysterious in the way we assume. It was a practical system, one of the oldest we know of, pressed into wet clay by Sumerian scribes in southern Mesopotamia more than 5,000 years ago. Reed styluses angled into soft surfaces. Wedge-shaped impressions left to dry, then baked hard against decay. They used it for grain tallies, legal contracts, royal decrees, and the records of temples. Administration before art. Mythology came later, carried in the same script, stored in the same rooms as tax ledgers and harvest counts. These were not dreamers, they were bureaucrats. And bureaucrats do not leave warnings without reasons. Which is why this tablet should have been impossible to overlook. It was recovered in the late 19th century from ruins in southern Iraq, catalogued with dozens of similar fragments, and assigned a reference number suggesting religious content. Scholars who examined it read it as a variant of a known hymn tradition, with divine beings, cosmic events, and standard mythological language. No one flagged it for priority translation. It sat in institutional storage for the better part of a century, handled occasionally, photographed twice, never fully read. The reference number it carried marked it as a hymn fragment, nothing more. We accepted that classification without question, the way we accept most classifications from the 19th century. We moved on. This was not unusual. The world's museums hold tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets, many of them untranslated. The script's complexity made progress slow. Signs shift in meaning, depending on context, dialect, and period. Grammar constructions vanished with the civilizations that produced them. Even skilled scholars working across entire careers managed only fragments of the full picture. The tablet was not lost. It was buried in plain sight, waiting for something that did not yet exist. That something arrived. Machine learning. Models trained on thousands of cuneiform inscriptions were applied to the wider tablet corpus in the early 2020s. They did not translate the way we do, slowly sign by sign reaching for analogies. They cross-referenced. They identified phrase structures, flagged dialectical patterns, and reconstructed damaged sequences by comparing broken endings against intact examples from similar periods. Tablets that had resisted a century of scholarship began to yield, and among them, this one. The first pass produced nothing alarming. Sky signs appeared frequently in Mesopotamian texts. The omen tradition was well established. The Enuma Anu Enlil corpus alone contained thousands of celestial observations, each one tied to a predicted event. Priests in cities like Nippur and Uruk had tracked planetary movements, eclipses, and atmospheric disturbances for centuries, pressing each one into clay. To see sky signs in a tablet from this period was expected. Familiar. The kind of thing we have learned to read past. What was not expected was the structure. Most omen tablets follow a conditional form. If this sign appears in the sky, then this event will follow. The logic is observational. It looks backward at what has been recorded and forward at what scribes predicted. This tablet did not follow that structure. It did not read as observational prediction. It read as sequence. A series of events described in order, each one linked to the next, each one escalating in severity. The signs did not predict destruction, they preceded it. And after the final sign, the language changed entirely. Where the omen tradition speaks of kings, harvests, and the fate of cities, this tablet narrowed its address to something smaller, something more deliberate, not a city, not a dynasty. A single figure, a scribe or priest, receiving a command not to perform a ritual or deliver a message to a king. The command was to preserve, to take what had been witnessed and press it into clay, and ensure it survived whatever came next. We had assumed this was standard scribal duty. It was not. The preservation order in this tablet pointed outward, past any known institutional tradition, past any identifiable successor, past the scribe's own time entirely. This was not myth. This was not poetry. This was an instruction for transmission. And when we finally understood that, the question we had been avoiding became impossible to ignore. Who was this message for? The address in the damaged passage was the first thing that stopped us. Most preservation orders in ancient Mesopotamia name an institution, a temple, a lineage. They pass instructions laterally, from one generation of scribes to the next, within a known system. This tablet did not do that. The phrasing, as reconstructed by AI from the surviving wedge marks, pointed outward, past the scribal class, past the priestly orders, past any identifiable successor. It pointed, as far as we can determine, toward no one the scribe could have known, toward no one living in the scribe's world at all. That is not a standard scribal choice, that is a decision. The broader Mesopotamian record makes this harder to dismiss. The most famous surviving example of the flood tradition, the tablet housed in the British Museum, recovered from the ruins of Nineveh, tells a story scholars have studied for over a century. A god warns a man, the man builds, the waters rise, the world ends, and begins again. That tablet is a literary document, magnificent in its scope, but this one does not echo it cleanly. The destruction described in these lines does not come from water, it comes from above. The sky in this text is not a backdrop, it is the source. And where flood stories name a god, a flood, a survivor, this tablet names a sequence, a series of signs, each preceding the next, each escalating, till the final one gives way to silence and ash. We have seen catastrophe encoded in myth before, we know how to read it and how to set it aside. But this was not encoded the way myth encodes catastrophe. The sequence of signs is specific. There is a light that does not behave like the sun. There is a sound that arrives before the event it announces. There is a period of stillness, then something the translation renders only partially as the land receiving what the sky no longer holds. Scholars who have reviewed the AI reconstruction are divided. Some read these passages as poetic hyperbole, dramatic language of the kind Mesopotamian scribes regularly used for eclipses and storms. Others are less certain. The sequence is too ordered. Each sign follows the last with a logic that is not symbolic. It is procedural. The scribes who copied text like this did not treat them as decoration. The Enuma Anu Enlil was recopied for centuries. Flood narratives appear across city traditions, dialects, and enormous stretches of time. When a text survived that long in the ancient world, it was not because it was beautiful. It was because someone believed it mattered enough to preserve at cost. One line, partially restored, reads, "The signs will come again, not may come, not came once, will come." That is a different kind of sentence. That is a sentence written by someone who believed the event was not finished, which raises the question we cannot answer and the AI cannot resolve. If the ancient scribes were not inventing myth, but preserving a distorted memory, a real event encoded in the only language available to them, what was the event? A meteor impact? A volcanic winter? An atmospheric catastrophe so severe that the civilization that survived it could only describe it in the vocabulary of divine punishment? We do not know. We may never know. The tablets were not written to explain, they were written to transmit. And they did. Through fire and conquest and centuries of silence the clay held. It outlasted the language that shaped it, the civilization that baked it, and every institution that catalogued it without reading it. What remains is the object itself, baked hard by hands we will never know, stored in silence for a full 100 years, recovered, reconstructed, and finally read, not as hymn, not as myth, not as administrative record, but as what the scribe always intended it to be. A warning, pressed into the most durable material available, addressed to whoever would one day develop the tools to understand it. We are those people. The message arrived. The clay held long enough to reach us. What we do with it now is the only question the scribe could not answer for us.